In the vast, rugged deserts of the American Southwest, there was a woman who was not like any other. Her name was Nayeli, a leader of the Apache people, but not just any leader. She was known far and wide as the giant Apache woman. Standing at an impressive 6 feet 5 inches, Nayeli towered over most of the men and women in her tribe. Her presence was commanding, and she was known for her extraordinary strength. The stories of her feats of power, lifting heavy boulders and taking on multiple warriors at once, spread across the land. But her strength was not just physical. It was a force that ran deep within her heart, driving her to protect her people and to lead them through challenges that seemed impossible. From a young age, Nayeli had been different. While most girls were taught traditional tasks like gathering food or weaving, Nayeli's training was fierce and demanding. Her mother, a respected warrior in the tribe, made sure her daughter learned the ways of battle, survival, and leadership. Her father had been a warrior too, but he passed away when Nayeli was young. This left her mother as the sole role model in her life. She pushed Nayeli hard, teaching her how to hunt, track animals, and fight with weapons. Nayeli learned quickly, not because she was simply strong, but because she was determined. She had a drive to prove that women could be just as fierce and capable as men. As she grew older, her reputation began to grow. By the time she was in her late teens, Nayeli had become a well-known figure in her tribe. Her skills were unmatched, and her leadership abilities were undeniable. The warriors of the tribe followed her without question, trusting her judgment in battle. Her knowledge of strategy and her ability to keep calm under pressure made her an effective and respected leader. Other tribes began to take notice of her abilities, and they spoke of her in whispers, both in awe and fear. But despite all her power and strength, Nayeli faced an inner struggle. She was strong, yes, but she felt an emptiness inside her. She often found herself looking at the men around her, whether they were warriors, leaders, or even potential suitors, and wondering if there was anyone who could match her. Time and time again, she met men who were strong, skilled, and brave, but none could truly stand beside her. None could equal her strength, her determination, or her ability to lead. She had seen countless men come to her with hopeful eyes, believing that they could win her heart, but none of them succeeded. "No man is strong enough for me," she would often say, half joking, half serious, but deep down the frustration was real. She had grown tired of seeing men try and fail. She had no interest in someone who would stand by her side merely as a symbol of her strength. She wanted someone who could challenge her, someone who could truly be her equal. But she began to wonder if such a person even existed. For years, she remained resolute in her independence. She led her people with unwavering dedication, facing every challenge that came her way. Yet in quiet moments, she found herself longing for something more. A companion who could stand with her, not behind her or ahead of her, but beside her. It wasn't just about finding a partner for battle or for survival. She longed for someone who could understand her in ways others couldn't. Someone who would accept her for who she was, strong and capable, but also vulnerable in her own way. Then one day, rumors reached her ears. There was a man, a cowboy, who had come to the region. His name was Jake Callahan, and though his name wasn't widely known, whispers about him reached the farthest corners of the land. Jake was described as fearless, a skilled gunslinger, and a cowboy who had faced many dangers without fear. It was said that he had traveled across the country, from the mountains to the plains, and that he had survived countless challenges along the way. He was a man of few words, but when he spoke, people listened. He was known for his courage, his quick thinking, and his ability to get out of dangerous situations unscathed. At first, Nayeli didn't think much of it. She had heard about many men who boasted of their skills, and most of them had turned out to be nothing more than tall tales. But something about the stories of this cowboy intrigued her. It wasn't his strength that caught her attention. It was his fearlessness. Here was a man who had traveled alone through harsh lands, who had faced danger head-on without hesitation. Nayeli wondered if this man could possibly be different from the others. Could he be the one who could truly meet her on equal ground? Curiosity grew within her, and before long she decided to seek him out. She had no plans to fall for him, or to let him become another failed suitor. She only wanted to see for herself what kind of man he was and whether the rumors were true. If he was truly as brave as people said, she might find some respect for him. But she was sure that no man could ever match her in strength or courage. It didn't take long for her to find Jake. He was camped just outside the tribe's lands. and when she rode up to his camp, she saw a man sitting alone, watching the fire with a calm demeanor. He didn't seem to notice her at first, but Nayeli wasn't the type to sneak up on anyone. She rode straight toward him, and as she approached, Jake slowly stood up, his eyes locking with hers. His expression was unreadable, but his posture remained relaxed. "I've heard of you," she said, her voice steady and firm, the fearless cowboy who thinks he can face anything. "Do you think you can match me? Prove to me you are strong enough for a woman like me." Jake didn't respond immediately. He simply studied her as if measuring the depth of her words. Then with a small, knowing smile, he spoke. "I don't aim to prove anything to you, lady. I've never needed to. But I'd be happy to try." At first, Nayeli thought this was just another man trying to impress her with bravado. But there was something in his eyes, something that made her pause. He wasn't afraid of her, and he wasn't trying to show off either. There was no arrogance in him, only quiet confidence. Nayeli was intrigued. She had heard men boast before, but she had never met one who seemed so unfazed by the idea of challenging her. There was a moment of silence, and then she decided to test him, to see if he truly had the mettle he claimed. "Fine," she said. "Prove it. Show me what you've got." Jake's eyes twinkled with something. Was it amusement or simply determination? Nayeli couldn't quite tell, but she knew one thing for sure. She was no longer dealing with just another man trying to win her over. This cowboy was different, and she was about to find out just how much. Jake's calm gaze never left Nayeli's as she challenged him. He didn't seem intimidated by her towering figure or her reputation as the giant Apache woman. Instead, there was a quiet strength about him that intrigued her even more. She had heard the stories of his fearless nature, but now she wanted to see for herself. Was he truly as brave as people said? Could he match her strength even if it wasn't physical strength? Without a word, Nayeli motioned for Jake to follow her. She led him toward the edge of her tribe's territory, where a series of challenges awaited. She had spent years proving herself capable of handling anything life threw her way, and now she was going to see if this cowboy was up to the task. The first test was a simple one, a strength trial. Nayeli picked up a massive boulder from the ground and lifted it above her head effortlessly, demonstrating her unmatched physical power. It wasn't enough for her just to show off her strength. She wanted to see if Jake could even approach it. Jake looked at the boulder with a calm expression. He didn't try to match her strength, but instead he walked around it, studying it from every angle. After a few moments, he dropped to his knees and began to carefully examine the ground beneath it. Nayeli watched him closely, expecting him to back down, but instead Jake dug into the earth, finding leverage and using the terrain to his advantage. With a grunt of effort, he managed to push the boulder a few inches. It wasn't the same as lifting it, but it was a different kind of strength, one that used brains as much as brawn. Nayeli's eyes narrowed as she watched. Most men would have either tried to lift the rock or given up entirely, but Jake wasn't like most men. He had found another way. She wasn't sure if she admired him yet, but she was certainly curious. She hadn't expected him to approach the challenge like that. Next, she led him to a thick forest where the air was dense with the scent of pine, and the ground was uneven with rocks and roots. The second test was a survival challenge. They had to make it through the forest and find food and water before sundown. It was a test of not just physical endurance, but also their resourcefulness. Nayeli knew the forest like the back of her hand, but she was determined to see how Jake would handle it. As they moved deeper into the woods, Nayeli's mind raced with thoughts of how this cowboy might fail. Would he panic when faced with the difficulty of the terrain? Would he give up when things got tough? But Jake seemed unfazed. He moved with a confidence that suggested he had been in similar situations before. Unlike Nayeli, who moved with the urgency of a seasoned survivor, Jake took his time. He studied the ground, listened to the birds, and followed the flow of the wind. Hours passed as they searched for water. Nayeli, normally so quick and efficient in finding what she needed, began to feel the strain of the task. The day was growing hotter, and the land seemed more barren than usual. She had been so focused on the challenge, so sure that Jake would struggle, that she hadn't noticed the exhaustion creeping up on her. But Jake, he remained steady, his eyes scanning the landscape with quiet determination. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Jake stopped and knelt beside a rock. "There," he said simply, pointing to a small crack in the earth. Without waiting for Nayeli's approval, he began to dig. After a few moments, water started to seep from the ground and Nayeli's heart skipped a beat. It was clear he had known exactly what he was doing. He had found water in a place she thought was dry. Nayeli felt a mixture of admiration and surprise. She had always prided herself on her ability to survive, but Jake had proven himself just as capable, if not more so, in this test. They drank from the small spring, and for the first time Nayeli began to see Jake in a new light. He wasn't just a cowboy. He was someone who could adapt to the harshest of environments and still find a way to thrive. As the day turned into evening, the next challenge came, a combat test. Nayeli wasn't sure what to expect from Jake in battle. She had faced many enemies over the years, and she had fought alongside warriors who had proven their worth in the heat of combat. Would Jake be the same? Could he match her in the kind of fighting that had made her legendary? Without warning, Nayeli pulled out her bow and fired an arrow toward a target. It was a perfect shot, hitting the bullseye with ease. Jake watched intently but said nothing. Nayeli was ready for him to show off his own skills, but when he finally moved, it wasn't to draw a weapon. Instead, he crouched low and began to study the surroundings. He wasn't just watching her. He was analyzing the environment, waiting for the right moment. After a few minutes of tense silence, Jake made his move. He picked up a nearby branch and used it as a makeshift spear, moving swiftly and silently. He didn't try to show off or prove anything. Instead, he acted with quiet precision, making every move count. The way he approached the combat challenge was different from Nayeli's, but there was no doubt in her mind that he was skilled. By the time the sun began to set, Nayeli realized something. Jake wasn't just strong in body, he was strong in mind as well. He had proven that he wasn't just another man trying to impress her. He was a man who had earned her respect. Nayeli had always believed that strength meant being able to lift the heaviest boulders or strike the hardest blows in battle. But now she was starting to understand that there were other kinds of strength. Strength of character, strength of will, and strength that came from the heart. As the night settled in and they sat by the fire, the silence between them grew more comfortable. The tension that had existed earlier seemed to fade. Nayeli, for the first time, found herself thinking that maybe, just maybe, Jake wasn't so different from her after all. They were both survivors. They were both leaders. They both had faced the worst the world had to offer and came out stronger for it. Jake spoke quietly as the fire crackled. "You're not like anyone I've met before," he said. "I can see why they call you the giant Apache woman. But you're more than that. You're a leader, a warrior. I've never met anyone who carries that much strength in their soul." Nayeli felt a strange warmth in her chest at his words. It was the first time someone had ever acknowledged the depth of her strength, not just her physical power. She looked at him for a long moment, her expression softening. "I never thought I'd find someone who could understand me," she said. "But I think you might be the first." Jake smiled, and for the first time Nayeli didn't feel alone. She had always been the leader, the warrior, the strong one. But in Jake's presence, she felt like she had found a partner, someone who could stand beside her, not as a follower or a challenger, but as an equal. As the fire burned low, Nayeli realized that she hadn't just found a man who could match her strength. She had found someone who could meet her on every level, someone who understood what it meant to be truly strong. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, she was ready to find out.